move into another war term, or year. This is 64. Some events have come out. We had a remix, so everybody's got a new pile. One interesting one here is decreased demand. All the commodities are going to produce $1 less than they normally would, unless that brings them to zero, in which case they're counted as a half rounded up after you total it all. That's going to be a problem, obviously, for the trading nations. They're going to have more trouble making those big goals. I think Holland still has a big pile of money in there, so they can probably crank their prestige up if they so desire. Of course, they may not so desire, right? There's reasons to maybe try to sandbag their score here and try to keep it low so that they can pad it later using the cash out of the treasury. That might be more interesting. I'm not sure. Otherwise, let's see. We got a new one. We've got, well, this is the fleets ability to rebuild fleets. Russia may put that up to some sort of bid during the diplomacy phase. Austria has one, which is, England would have loved to have had this, and they may end up buying it anyway. It's a free casus belli if you share a commerce region with someone. Now, at this particular point, England and Holland do not, so it may not be that terribly valuable to them to try to. Trying to engineer that. It depends on the ordering, but the English are going to be going first in the transfers. If they end up devaluing one of the Dutch merchant locations, the Dutch may move out of that place where they otherwise would be generating points. Because of the exclusive nature of the trade that both the Dutch and the English have, it's also going to probably appear kind of weird. Some of the colonial areas, though, you know, the Dutch are up here. We could reduce the opportunity. What the hell is this? That's our regular fleet kicking around up there, doing some privateering. Anyway, that's an issue there. Resistance in Holland. The French don't particularly want to give the Dutch that. We can hold on to that. We don't have any great goals against Holland at this point, but maybe we will. And this allows them to flood the dikes. You got like peasants here. The secret cabinet allows you to negate an event as it's being played by another player. One biggie. Turkey got rid of their problem. And now, well, Austria maybe is a little bit less interested in that war. They were more in favor of it before. Spain got hit with inflation, which I think I may have screwed up last time. It halves your treasury. They didn't have any, but as well as increasing the cost. Anyway, this is the biggie, and we're moving in the reduced commerce, and we're moving into the commerce phase. So, well, we should be seeing some smaller piles of money. Money didn't go terribly well for England. They were the ones who got kind of hosed the worst. They won, I guess only one of two competitions they were involved in. But the problem is the taxes are still collected at full value. So places where they were kind of splitting money, they weren't getting enough. They ended up with something like $6. They have a 7 structure, so they couldn't possibly meet their structure. They made the decision to make a roll to increase structure. They, of course, failed at that. That's very difficult. And then they paid $1 in dividends, which means they lost a point for being lower than some people they should have been ahead of. Theoretically. They also took a risk at the crisis of confidence, but because they paid $1, they ended up surviving that. You only fail on a 6 or higher, and you get a +1 for high competition and a +1 for failing to pay any dividend at all. So it's really tough to actually lose your structure. Other people all met their prices. Holland actually met double the price and made an attempt at a boat, which they failed. So they're up to 16. Nobody else took any penalties, though, because they met their expected costs. That's going to put us into the diplomatic. The only major diplomatic factor, Turkey declared war on Austria. There was a lot of attempts to court Prussia for one side or the other. Prussia trying to say, hey, you know, Austria, if you declare war, we're allied. If we're allied, and you know, you make me a kingdom, then you get a whole new army. And Austria saying, well, you know, I don't really plan on declaring war, and if Turkey declares war on me, we can do that next turn. And then Turkey kind of courting Prussia, saying, hey, you know, you could slam into Austria's soft white underbelly there. I've got a question. I'm not sure where the Reich unit comes in. There's also the Ansbach. That may be related to it. I'm not sure if they're... This is the Ansbach unit, Würzburg. It looks like it probably is. Unless there's Anhalt or something like that. Just, you know, getting used to what all the minors is an issue in this game. And I'm just not sure where we are. But attempts to call Savoy and the Palatinate into this fight both failed. Baden's restoring units. Lorraine entered on Austria's side, but I don't think they're allowed to traverse the neutrals in the Holy Roman Empire in this game. I haven't been able to find anything relating to that. Maybe when I look up the Ansbach... Ooh, I got a bunch of units that were dead from a battle. Maybe when I look into that, we'll be able to see. Right now, nobody's got money for the fortresses, but I think they can make their taxes and decide whether or not they're going to activate them. The Turks certainly would like their fortresses activated. And to tell you the truth, I think the Austrians might be interested, just to prevent this from getting too ugly. At the very least, they're interested in activating Vienna. That is Turkey's goal here. If Turkey can sweep through what's left of Hungary, which is just this one province here, and take Vienna, that is what they want. They've got special rules that allow them to annex Vienna, which would create a new capital for the Habsburg. Okay, so at the end of the royal phase, we're beginning to see the economies grinding down that are at war. Not so much Austria and Turkey, who just entered one, although Turkey has this problem. All of Hungary went into revolt. Basically, if they get a revolt result on a bad die roll, or if you get a revolt result on a bad die roll, it means one of your principalities goes. Now, they have a couple. They have this one, and they also have this one here. It was their choice. They chose to take the more valuable Hungary, because then they can focus their attack in the same direction as the revolt. A hard call either way. This one costs them more, but at least their armies are going to be centered there, and they'll be able to wipe those revolts out pretty easily. Countries like France and Spain barely able to build anything. Spain got one army. France actually got 2 units on the board, because remember, France is allowed to build 4 or 5. They didn't have enough cash to build 5. So they're allowed to build 5, but they only built 4. Spain's only allowed to build 2 without risking the exceptional issues. Risking those makes it more likely you build nothing. So since they feel like they're in the lead, they kind of are playing it safe, and France didn't have the cash to do otherwise. But, you know, the French, they've lost everything in the south except Roussillon, which is unconnected and in trouble now, so it's not producing money. Likewise, Russia learned their lesson not to overtax, so they were able to build maybe a couple of units down here, and Poland built like 3. We just don't have these huge armies forming. The Turks actually had a little bit of extra money. They could buy more units, I guess. I think they're out of units to buy, though. All they have is an artillery they were able to buy. Pretty much everything started on the board. Austria did buy some units. I decided to give Austria this Reich unit. I can't figure out what the rules are on it. If it's the Ansbach, I think that other unit is. that comes into play. That can only be tested if somebody enters the Reich, and that includes Österreich. This unit, as far as I'm concerned, it can be built anywhere there. It's an Austrian unit. It's a feudal unit, so, it comes for free. Well, where does it come? Somewhere in the empire that they're allowed to build units, or an ally's allowed to build units. That's how I'm looking at it. Prussia started building up their cav, basically with the, okay, I can't build a navy. I'm not going to get a chance at that, so let's try. They just didn't have the cash. It cost $10 to try to build that. Let's try to build up an army. If that way we can maybe get to play in this game in some sense. Anyway, that's where we are. I was mistaken. The HRE, if you're a member of the HRE, you can pass through HRE territory, and indeed you can pass through Poland as well. I'm in the midst of the military phase so far. The Spanish Swedes managed to take Paris, and that's worth 2 PPs, as well as winning a battle. You can see they're just driving the French deeper and deeper into the hole. It's going to be hard for them to come out of it. And if France can't regain some of their economic capabilities, they're in trouble. So basically, if they can't make things start looking a little bit better this turn, I think they've got to accept some kind of peace. So end of the line here on this spring turn, we move into the fall. The Poles went up and destroyed a small Russian contingent that had gone and captured a territory. And basically, rather than doing a crapshoot of an attack on the big force, which they had repulsed already, but it still was a pretty even fight, they went and destroyed a couple of units, figuring, well, they regained some of their territory, although a devastation there makes that less valuable. Over here, the Austrians have swept into Hungary, and they've grabbed almost all of it. There's one province they haven't taken, and this is still under siege. They took this fortification. Remember, it says may raise. Well, they chose not to, for whatever reason. I'm not sure that's legitimate, but it makes sense to me that they be allowed to do that. Now, here's the thing. There's more of these damn new fortresses than can possibly enter the game by the way the rules are stated. My feeling is at the beginning of any single war, or in the course of any period of peace, you should be allowed to add one fortress to the game or something. I don't know. It doesn't make sense the way that there'd be so many of those damn counters. And also, they are an expense, and they are very useful, but I don't think they're so useful that it would make no sense to allow someone to produce more of them. Anyway, the rebellion's been pretty much put down everywhere. Some of those Turkish units, well, most of them just fell back. The Austrians took some losses on attrition moving into there. Spreading out into lots of little kind of moderate-sized stacks is really bad compared to a couple of bigger stacks. But they needed to do it to capture all that territory. And they also got honors of war on a Turkish unit, which I think comes in at the beginning of next year. I didn't want to look it up. For the French, the Spaniards were stupid and fought out to the death here. They had one unit against like 3 at the end, and they just kept fighting in the hopes of kind of an attritional situation, or maybe they could win because they were facing French units that were already demoralized by that point in the battle. But, well, it didn't work out too well for them. On the other hand, the other French army ran in here. It was just one strength point, trying to retake Paris. It got intercepted and obviously destroyed. So we're still facing a fairly big force of Swedes and Spaniards. Well, I think they're all Swedes, right? Those are all artillery. 2, 3, 4. 4 Swedes. That's as big as the French have, including these guys down here. Now these guys slipped away. So it's just really this troublesome situation. Also, I forgot to mention, early in during the naval phase, one of these got taken down, and I forgot to give the guy who took it down, which is the Swedes, $1 for that. When you do privateering successfully, you get some money. It's expensive to maintain navies out at sea. That's costing them $1 a turn, but it seems worthwhile to help try to put the pressure on the French. At this point, Sweden, assuming France doesn't do anything, probably wants to sail a ship back and grab an infantry or something and try to land it somewhere that they can take. We've already got the Spaniards have this. Now, of course, they could cede that, but Spain has most of the Caribbean territory other than the English Isle. So Sweden might want to kind of push its way into someplace else like India or something. There aren't a lot of options, really. There's North America as well. India, I don't know. They're both going to be pretty hard to take. There's 2 territories in North America that are French. I don't know. There's less things to take here, but there's, in both cases, 3 countries that have to be overcome. So I don't see too much chance of a grand conquest going on over there that'll terribly help Sweden. In terms of France, actually, Paris has been taken by the Swedes. So I should put a blue marker there. That's kind of confusing. And it doesn't really make too much difference because they can't take Paris from the French. So territorially, it's the Spaniards who could gain stuff. They could gain some stuff in southern France, and they can also gain something there. Sweden's not terribly thrilled with what's coming out of this war, although, they're getting kind of a bit of a boost point-wise. They got to be in here somewhere. Oh, there they are at 15. Yeah, this war hasn't been terribly friendly to them, so they might be willing to go with a lesser peace than maybe Spain thinks it should get. And given that Spain doesn't have much of an army, they may well listen to that. So I think we are very likely to see a peace coming up in the next turn. Not a white peace, no question there. France had its options at that, but they wanted this war. They started the war, so it's their own fault that it's that way. But our other wars look like they're still holding up pretty heavily. Now we can't have peace in the fall. We have to go through the fall military season. That's one of the. I'm a little iffy on that. You should be able to end the war at any point, but there's no politics phase. So, I just wish there was a peace phase in there. Navally, Sweden chose not to transfer an infantry to the colonial territories. They only had 1 infantry, so they could only transfer an infantry and a cav to here. They sent something to the New World. All they'd be getting, or to the colonial areas, all they'd be getting is 1 cav in here, and they need the flow of troops, they think. Otherwise, the ordering, Spain and Sweden are in the same position. By the way, they managed to sink another merchant ship. Spain and Sweden are in the same position, but the orders of the others have reversed. Now, I think the Poles are going to let the Russians go first, because the Poles are already consolidated. That makes the Russians, if they want to attack, to take, if they want to attack the main force, to take the attrition roll, and if they want to spread out, to be available to be hunted down and knocked out in detail. Larger stacks seem to work better in combat, but getting them to the combat intact is the hard part. And I'm not so sure if the Turks probably want to go first so that the Austrians don't get a chance to consolidate. Of course, I was wrong about the ordering for the Turks. They had second choice. The Austrians chose to go first, and you can see they launched there. The Russians pushed against the Polish. They managed to destroy the one lone unit, but then get beaten in a major battle. And you can see Polish-Turkish prestige is being affected by that. For the French, well, they managed to catch the Swedish unit moving forward and then avoid a battle with this guy. They've got kind of a problem in that they really have to, they have a weaker force. They can't really win the battle, so I'm not quite sure what to do except try to link up with these units. Alright, so Poland won another major battle up here, and there's something weird that's happened here. These two territories, I think, have been continuously under Russian control for at least the last couple seasons, and this one's been continuously under Polish control. I believe that switches. I have to find the chart somewhere to make sure that those are disputed regions. I think they are. If they are, that's what happens. Other damn thing I just tried to look for and found that my rules had been shuffled, i.e. there were pages that were out of order, etc. No big shock when you have not a rule book. You know, anytime you're dealing with printed out rules, obviously some solutions have been offered, but they're still not going to make up for what I consider a bound rule book. Is somewhere there's a rule, and I think what it is somewhere at the end of the turn or something or another, on a 4 through 6, devastations come off. I can't find it. Maybe it's under the winter phase rules for units or something. I got no idea though. I'm just lost on this. So, and I haven't done my Turks yet. This game is very frustrating because the rules are, largely because they're just loose leaf, but also they're not well organized at all. And EUs aren't terribly well organized either, though. Found that role. It's under the military phase. It would really be nice if they had a blown up version of the sequence of play. I know that the sequence of play takes up a big part of a page anyway, but a nice effort would be to make a player aid with all the things that happen, because there aren't that many in this game. It's not like EU where there's just, thousands of special cases. But these just don't suffice to tell you what's going on, and there's no even blown up version that gives you it in words, as most games tend to do. The Turkish situation actually is beginning to show some of the way the system kind of works in a nice sort of way when you have lines, etc. The Austrians were up along the line here. The Turks pushed into all three spaces. The Austrians withdrew from here, but everywhere else they kind of viewed it as more important. They already owned the fortress. Okay. After attrition checks, the Turks were a little weaker, especially here, where they weren't sure they could win the battle, but they attempted battles in the two spaces that they were in. They didn't find it here. They had to withdraw due to winter quarters rules. And then this was a major battle, which, well, it only went one round, and the Austrians decided to leave because they were clearly losing the battle. They were outnumbered and outgunned and everything, so they didn't want to take larger losses. So the Turks managed to take that and get, a bonus in the spread there. And then here we've got, because regions can hold two stacks, we've got a small covering force taking the siege, and the larger field army outside protecting it, which is exactly how things should be. So far we haven't seen that because we haven't seen fortresses that are way under prevalent in this game, by the way that I understand the rules, and I think I'm kind of going to tweak that a little bit, as I've explained earlier. All right. So now we're just going to check to see if anybody dies and then score victory points, basically. Okay, so we move into 65 and we've got some things to come in here. We got the Duke of York for England, who gives us a naval leader, actually, for a while. He'll disappear when James takes the throne. And then we've got a couple of these that I got to place wherever they belong. I'll try to remember that. Life tests, nothing came up. No one's over their age at this point. But I was wrong about these suckers. They're not disputed territories. This is disputed, this is, and this is. But pushing deeper into the southern Russia is not allowed. These are all disputed. I think Poland actually disputes them. I'm not sure. But anyway, so there's no automatic conquest of those territories. Point-wise, if we take a look, France is down at 46. They're just not producing points. Russia is at 52. These are the people who are really kind of struggling. England's only at 56. They haven't been scoring very well. I haven't finished the point phase, but other people are up near 70. Now, this is the dilemma of empires in arms, too. You could keep fighting. The French could keep fighting this war. Never give up. Good way to lose the game, because you're not going to come out of here. You're not going to come out of here as long as you're at war. You might get out of the war without losing much, but you're going to take this huge bath on points. And meanwhile, the people you're fighting are doing fairly well. Same situation here with Russia. Although they're not quite guaranteed to be at a loss here. They get to pick their own fight later. They're going to have areas that they dispute of Poland. I think that they have claims to. God, I don't know. But they should be able to generate a declaration of war at some cost. And it should be easier for them to have a good, strong military than it is for Poland. The problem is they really did kind of need to win this war. And instead, if they're going to give up the Ukraine, they're giving up some of their value there. So that's a factor to consider when looking into this. Do you want to risk losing more of your territory and the war being a certain loss before you give anything up? And once it is a certain loss, maybe you got to give more up, because France could have had a white peace not too long ago, and now chances are they are giving something up. I just cannot see Spain, at least, being willing to accept less than some sort of demands. I'm not sure what kind. And Sweden wants something out of the war too. They got called in, or they allowed themselves to enter the war in a situation that, they kind of want some gain out of it, other than just, hey, I'm about where I would have been had I been at peace. Of course, they saved Flanders, perhaps. All right, I'm going to send this one up and then try to figure out what the hell's going on with everything.